All right, class, I'm back again, and this is the last example that we did not get to in class this week, and so I wanted to take a moment to do a quick video on how to do one of these, although this one you probably could have just read how to do this in the chapter, but hey, this just gives me another opportunity to play with my new video recording software and just get better at using it. So preferred stock, how is it different from common stock? Every other example that we've done so far has been with common stock. And if you recall back during the first lecture for this chapter, we talked about what residual claims means, or residual claimants, and how common stockholders are residual claimants. Okay, so what that means is remember, there's a difference between debt and equity. Someone that holds a bond over a company is someone that the company owes a debt to. Someone who owns the stock is a part owner in the company, and so they have a equity share in that company. And that means that in the grand scheme of things, that debtors will always be satisfied before stockholders. But then when we look at stockholders, there's actually two degrees of stockholder. There are common stockholders, and then there are preferred stockholders. Common stockholders, like we talked about in class, they never actually know whether or not they're going to get a dividend, right? So we have, let's go ahead and write some of this out. So preferred versus common. They're both residual. So they're both residual claimants, which means that the company must turn over enough of a profit. They must have high enough retained earnings to dish out dividends. But then if and when the time comes, preferred dividend holders are issued dividends before. Okay, and so common stockholders are really the last folks that get paid out when we're talking about dividends. And preferred stockholders, their claims on dividends are similar to bond claims. They're not the same, but they're treated the same in terms of how we would calculate them using time value of money. And so let's look at this problem to see how you would price out preferred stock versus how we've been pricing out common stock. So the Mid-American Utility Company's preferred stock pays an annual dividend of 8% per year on its par value. So you're going to see some terms that we've seen in the past, but not used with stock. Most importantly, par value. So we've not seen that term used before with stock. We've seen it used with bonds, and that's kind of like your clue here, is we're probably going to treat this similar to a bond, right? Because we're hearing that term, and that term should trigger your memory and say, okay, par value. What else have we called par value? We've called par value. Oops. Let's see. We've also called par value face value, right? We've also called it future value. And we've also called it the maturity value, or value at maturity, right? Okay, so that's important to note that there's a par value for a stock. Now, how is it different from a bond? Well, when we hear these terms with a bond, it means that that's when the bond ends. But when it comes to preferred stock, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, preferred stock is never ending. It's infinite. As long as I'm a holder of it, then I get that dividend, and I can just hold it on and on forever. There are cases where you can convert preferred stock to common stock. It talks about that in your book, and I encourage you to read about it. But most preferred stockholders are going to hold on to preferred stock because of how it earns money. Okay, so let's look at how we would price one out then. So the price of preferred stock, since it is similar to a bond, can also be calculated using the same time value of money equation that we would use to calculate a bond with an infinite cycle, with an infinite maturity, which means that it never actually matures, right? And remember, we talked about this in class. When you hear the word infinite, you should be thinking of what? What should you think of when you hear infinite? I hope that you said perpetuity, right? I so hope that that's what you thought when I asked that question, right? So we can then think about, when we hear the word infinite, that the present value of a perpetuity is simply equal to the payments, right? That infinite payment stream all over the required rate of return. All right, so if we're talking about preferred stock, it's the same formula. We just have to figure out what the payments are, right? So when we talk about preferred stock, ooh, my spelling is terrible today. Let me go back. Good Lord. There we go. Okay, when we're talking about preferred stock, what is the payment? Okay, well, remember, a lot of the information that we're being given sounds a lot like a bond, right? So it pays an annual dividend of 8% per year. That's a percentage. It's not a real dollar value, is it? It's also on a par value of $60. But just like we said before, par value is the same thing as saying face value. And how did we figure out what a coupon was when we were pricing out bonds? We took the par value and we multiplied it by the coupon rate, right? So with preferred stock, you're just going to multiply it by the dividend rate. Okay? And that is equal to the payment. That's your annual payment. All right? And so you're given R. R is how much you want to earn, which is the 10%. So we basically do two steps, and we've solved this problem. Okay? So first, I need to know what my payments are. So I'm going to take the payment. I'm going to take the $60 par value, and I'm going to multiply it by 8%, which in decimal form is 0.08. Okay, so let me get my calculator. And I'm getting $4.80. Okay, so now that I have my payment, I can now see what the present value of a preferred stock is, which is the same thing as the present value of a perpetuity. So I'm going to say the payment over my required rate of return, which is 10% or 0.10. And so the price that I would be willing to pay for preferred stock that has a par value of $60, right, with an 8% annual dividend and a required return of 10% is $48 even. And that's it. It's that simple. So again, this was supposed to be a short one, but if you come across a question that's asking about preferred stock, I wanted you to have an example to go by. If you have any questions, just let me know.